Yes, people are wanting more and more delivery and services and those type of things, but I do believe that it will never go away, that people want to come to a local store. They want to be seen, they want to be talked to, they want to communicate with others and run into your neighbors. Sometimes you come to a store, you don't want to run into your neighbors, but a lot of times you do. You're going to the store and you run into people you know or you haven't seen. And so there's just a great sense of community. And I think all of our stores are located in great communities throughout Portland.
The Portland 50 podcast is brought to you by Jaguar Land Rover Portland. One company, two iconic brands. Jaguar Land Rover Portland is a Don Rasmussen company, the legendary Portland institution serving our community since 1950. Additional support for the Portland 50 is provided by Zupans Markets. Welcome back to the Portland 50. I'm your host, Cort Johnson. What's fun about the Portland 50 is that it's a podcast with interviews and conversations about the people and places that make Portland unique. And today's guest and the subject actually kind of is the best of both of those worlds. Mike Zupan, the president of Zupans Markets, a local market that has been here in the Portland area for going on 45 years, back to 1975. And I got to be honest with you, I shop regularly at Zupans. I do have some business associations with the Zupans, but you're going to hear me in this podcast. I completely fanboy about Zupans because the experience of shopping there is different than a lot of places that you would get at just your regular grocery market. And so I think that was important to kind of highlight the things that have really stood out to me and talk to Mike about, why it is that way. Because there are some things that are done on purpose. And then I think there's byproducts, things that just happen because of the culture that they have created at Zupans Markets. But interesting things about Mike that we'll talk about. I was not aware of him being a first-generation American, that his father, John, that started Zupans Markets back in 1975, was born overseas. So we're going to talk about that, what brought them to the United States, how they ended up here in Portland, and how Zupans evolved over the years. And towards the end, we talk about where Zupans and maybe even Portland itself go into the future. So I really enjoyed my time with Mike Zupan. He's our guest on this episode of the Portland 50.
You're going to edit this anyway, right? So,
it's interesting. I do edit it. I try not to edit too much because the best stuff comes from just
comes out
the raw conversations. But yeah. Plus, I'm slightly lazy. I'm just then I have to go and find it.
No worries. I'll try not to.
But what's interesting is as a guy who shops regularly at Zupans, and then as I kind of prepare for this interview, and realizing your father's background in produce and then your background in produce, walking into Zupans makes complete sense now. Just this focus on you have the most beautiful produce sections of any market.
Well, I think it's a passion that started with my father, certainly. And when you walk into our stores, I say the first thing we want you to see is flowers outside, but the second thing is really produce. And
you display the produce as equally beautiful as the flowers. That's what's amazing about it. You walk in there and just oh man, this could be art.
I think it is art in its own sense. The produce, always talk about produce, we talk about what it tastes like. And you eat with your eyes first. Mm-hmm. So if it looks good, then that's going to be your first draw to the product.
Sure.
And then you're going to taste it, and that's what's going to hook you. And so we always say a strawberry should taste like a strawberry, or a watermelon should taste like a watermelon. And that sounds so simple, but a lot of times you go into stores and you'll see a beautiful red strawberry and it just tastes like cardboard.
Right.
So it doesn't taste like a berry.
And I should point out, and this has happened on numerous occasions when I've had questions about produce at Zupans, and I'll ask one of the grocers that are in there, something in produce. They will immediately, oftentimes they'll be like, "Let's taste it," and so you'll taste it together, and so you get to kind of get a taste of what you're buying. So you have some sort of.
That's part of our culture, though.
Yeah.
I think that it's not just looking at the product that you were talking about, the artwork of putting it out there and how we stack it and touch it, and the commitment that we make, and it's about touching every item every day. And so that sounds like a monumental task when you look at the produce department, and not just produce, but it's fish and it's meat and it's our food service, it's bakery. Like all those fresh products someone needs to look at those products and touch them every day to make sure that the quality and the freshness is at the level that we want it to be.
Yeah.
And so when you're in the produce department, the easiest thing to do when people are looking at a product is to just cut it open or peel it open or whatever it is and then taste it.
Right.
And then our people also get to taste it too. And so now they can talk to the customers and be like, oh, I just had that melon, or I just had that apple. This is my favorite apple right now.
Yeah.
This is my favorite berry right now. And this is why.
It makes a true difference when you're, again, to your point, talking to somebody who has tasted it before and actually has some experience with it, as opposed to the shoulder shrug that you get kind of in the bigger box things, and where they might not even normally work in that department on any given day. Let's go back to the beginning. You mentioned your father. He worked in different places in grocers, but produce was kind of where he found his lane, right?
Produce is where he started as a child working for Sheridan Foods, Sheridan Fruit, and I think that's where his first really understanding of produce came from, and the passion that was there. My grandfather actually was a truck driver, and so he would haul loads of produce from California and Modesto and Turlock and Salinas Valley, and he'd bring stuff up to Portland. And so my father kind of was involved with that at a young age, and rode in the trucks with my grandfather, and so would see some of the produce warehouses and places like that. And it was just a natural once he got into. From there, he went from Sheridan Fruit. He went to Fred Meyer's, worked in the produce department, and I think that's where his passion just continued to grow.
This is actually something I should have led with this. Yeah. The last name Zupan. What's the origin?
It's Croatian.
It's Croatian.
Yeah,
okay.
It is. Yeah.
How many generations back?
It's a great story. Really, it's the all-American story of my grandparents back in 1945. Immigrating to America, and they were actually being kicked out of what was then Yugoslavia with the communist dictator Tito was taking over the country, and my grandfather was a freedom fighter, and my grandmother, so he was off fighting the war. My grandmother was had just given birth to my father. They actually had escaped or left, I don't know about escaped, but really had left Yugoslavia, and were in Austria at the time. Had my grandfather under a tree in Austria, and somehow was able to meet up with my grandfather again. And they got on a boat and came across to Ellis Island. And
so that's one of those.
It is a great American story.
Yeah. And I think you're technically, with your father being born over there, you're first generation.
First generation, yeah. And they, they didn't have anything when they came here. And my grandfather he started driving a truck, and he drove a truck with his family on board, and ended up in Klamath Falls, Oregon, and then from Klamath Falls made his way up to Portland, where they settled in. And my father went to high school at Madison. Graduated from Madison High School, and then went to work ultimately for Fred Meyer's.
When did you? So Zupan started in 1975 when your father started the what was it called? Zupan's Markets then, or what was it called then?
No, my father bought a store with another gentleman, and who was also with Fred Meyer's, and Chuck Gaylord was his name, and Chuck was from the grocery side of Fred Meyer's. My father was from the produce side, and they bought their store in 1975 called Zim's Super Center, which is out in Gresham. Okay. Which right now is a car lot. no longer exists. Yeah. But that was back in 1975. And then in a few years later, my father ventured out on his own. And his first store, we had a lot of different stores, but I think Thriftway was at that time was a banner for the independents. And he opened his first Thriftway store.
There's been a lot of different Zupans in different cities and different versions of it. Yeah. Like the Zupans of 44 years ago is different than the ones from even 20 years ago, 10 years ago. It's been an evolution. Has that been an evolution of necessity, or actually it probably has been, but just the trends of grocery shopping has changed so much over the years.
Well, the industry has changed dramatically, right?
Yeah.
And it continues to change. I don't think you're seeing right now more change than ever.
Right. Just have it delivered to my house.
Yeah, I think if you go back into the 1970s or maybe even early 80s, but the independent market or independent grocers were over 25-30% of the overall market.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're in the single digits,
right,
or and slimmer. So I think the necessity of having to change over the years, we've had lots of different banners, different concepts that my father had tried, some successful, some not successful, from big box stores to price-driven, conventional,
mm-hmm.
to ultimately to what we are today, which is more of a higher-end gourmet specialty food type of market.
When did you get going in the grocer?
Well, for me personally, I think going to work in 1975 when my dad had his first store, and I think that during those days, both my mom and dad worked at the store,
mm-hmm.
and so it was very common for my sister and I to go to work with them. And sometimes we may be doing homework upstairs in their offices,
right.
or we'd be down in the back room bagging ice or sweeping floors or counting bottles.
Mm-hmm.
And so just from a very early age, I was like 10 years old. So.
And being put to work, was there a period? 'Cause my dad, and maybe this is the bad comparison, my dad was military, and I have a bunch of brothers who follow the military, and obviously a lot of respect for it. But for some reason, my dad saw me and it's like, "You're not doing this. This is not for you." I think he kind of saw that like entertainment and radio was the direction I was going to go. For you, what was your dad wanting you to get into the family business, or did he push you a certain way?
No, I don't think my father ever pushed me to get into the business. I think it just naturally came with being around it. I think early on, quite honestly, and going to work with my parents is like there was no other place to go.
Right.
And sometimes I'd go with my grandparents, but you want to be with your parents, you want to see them and see what they're doing.
Sure.
And they work really hard, and they had a real passion for the business and to make their business successful. So I think watching that at a young age helped me
set the course for you. Yeah. And then I understand. Was it an internship you did, or like a job you did with Associated Grocers?
Well, Associated Grocers was our wholesaler. So when I graduated college, we had just switched wholesalers. So Associated Grocers was a new wholesaler out of Seattle at the time.
Yeah.
And they offered this internship for me to go up there. I worked with them for 6 months and really got to see the wholesale side of the business and how that's run, because I had seen retail,
right?
But understanding the back end side, which if you look at today has really changed,
right? And
how, if I look where the wholesaler industry has gone, I think we were with United Grocers, who was purchased by Associated Grocers, who was purchased by Super Value, who's now just purchased by UNFI, and so they're just consolidated. Now there's really, for an independent, very few places for us to procure product.
Right. And that becomes a necessity. Just obviously, as a grocery store, as a market, you've got to have supply.
Yeah.
So when you are independent like you, do you piece it together for Zupans now, or do you have?
I think what makes us different, one of the things that we do is we procure from a lot of local artisans here in Portland. We're so lucky and fortunate that Portland has these great little artisan, whether it's chocolatiers or bakers or charcuterie makers. We have just a plethora of great producers here, and so we're able to give them an avenue to sell that product and tell their story as well.
The Portland 50 podcast is presented by Jaguar Land Rover Portland. One company, two iconic brands. Jaguar Land Rover Portland is a Don Rasmussen company, the legendary Portland institution serving our community since 1950. As the CEO of the company, how much time do you? I guess your corporate offices are now inside one of the stores now. Is that correct?
Yeah, I never say corporate. I say home office.
Right, your home office.
We're so far from corporate.
Right.
It's not even funny.
Yeah.
But our home office is actually just 2 blocks down the street from our macadam store right now. And I think if you ask me where the best place to be is not in the office, it's really out in the stores.
Right.
It's in the stores with our people, talking to them about what they're selling, what they're buying, what they're excited about, and also talking to customers. And just I love talking to customers about food, what they're cooking.
Yeah.
If I see them buying something, what are you going to do with that? What are you going to make with that?
It is interesting, as we were talking about kind of the trends of where grocery shopping goes, because you have obviously the big box stores, and then suddenly you can buy your grocery stores at the same place you can go and buy your kid a bike.
Right.
And it's all in the same place.
Right.
And at times there's a benefit to that, but and then in true American fashion, we figure out ways to not even have to go anywhere, and stuff is delivered to us. But what's great about Zupans is kind of that return to that small, I don't know, because I remember
It's
growing
community.
up, it's small, because in my hometown there was Smith's, not Smith's that's big in the Midwest or in the Mountain West, but it was Smith's Grocery, owned by the Smith family in my town.
Yeah.
And you could go there and they knew the store from front to back.
Yeah.
And you go to the butcher block, and it was fresh meat because the guy in the back, you knew him and he was telling you so, and that's the feeling you get at Zupans. And that's done by design.
Yeah, I think that the grocery store in general has always been a cornerstone of community. Mm-hmm. And so people are wanting more and more delivery and services and those type of things. But I do believe that it will never go away, that people want to come to a local store. They want to be seen. They want to be talked to. They want to communicate with others and run into your neighbors. Sometimes you come to a store, you don't want to run into your neighbors.
Right.
But a lot of times you do. You're going to the store and you run into people you know or you haven't seen. And so there's just a great sense of community. And I think all of our stores are located in great communities throughout Portland. So
yeah. What trends are you seeing right now? What is the future of grocery?
Oh, trends.
I mean, it's probably a pie in the
No, there's always trends. I think that it's not necessarily a trend, but people want to eat healthier.
Yeah.
They're choosing to eat healthier. They want to know where their products come from, how their products are grown or raised, or what it's fed. Mm-hmm. And those are trends that I think are going to continue. I think that the consumer wants more information about the product that they're putting in their body. The trend that I see or that we talk about is people are willing to indulge a little bit more when they do want to have a special meal or a special occasion. Well, there's we just had Father's Day, and you want to go out and grill a steak. I don't want just a steak. I want a great steak.
Yeah.
And what's that going to be? And so,
do you think because of those trends and because of what Zupans is currently doing, Zupans Markets, with this kind of, again, I say there's kind of this return to the hometown market. Do you think that's unique to Portland? Is this something that could only work in Portland, or do you think this is where it's going elsewhere in the country?
Oh, I think it works definitely in other areas of the country. We're a part of a network of a lot of especially independents around the country, so we get to share best practices, best ideas, and when we see it working elsewhere. But I think Portland, it is unique in the sense that in the West Coast in general, the quality of the grocery stores and shopping experiences that are on the West Coast, I think has always been a level superior to other areas of the country. Yeah. And so I think we've been very fortunate or spoiled in a good way for the Northwest consumer to have such options of where to shop for food.
Well, I think you get that when you talk about the meat, the butcher block going in there. You're dealing with ranches that are right here in the Pacific Northwest. The produce is coming in from local, and then you go to the bakery section. We just picked up some bread from who was it? It was Ken's Artisan. Yeah. And so
one of the best bread makers in the city.
His walnut baguette. Oh my goodness,
it's awesome.
You
it's
can't
so good.
Ever go wrong with the walnut baguette. Yeah. What's your favorite thing in the stores right now?
Oh my gosh.
Is that hard? Loaded question. I'll tell you what mine is.
There's so many good things.
Yeah, my favorite thing is the warm cookie that you can get.
The warm cookie's pretty good.
Oh my goodness! I'm very gluttonous. Yeah. I will eat that thing, and my wife is like, "You should probably have like 2 bites because it is so rich and it'd last you a week."
The cookie's really good.
Yeah.
I think our pokey is really good.
Yes.
It's made fresh every single day. I think there's so many unique products that our meat departments, our signature steaks, and we've got like 4 different cuts of them. They're big, thick steaks, so they're 2 inches thick, or something. Those are, let's say, going back to the old school way of cutting meat.
Yeah.
And giving you steaks that are, I think they're quite actually easier to cook if they're thicker.
Sure.
So there's some challenges in some of that in the thickness, but we can teach people how to do that,
right?
How to cook it. But I think that the steaks and how they eat and the flavor profile that in some of the Wagyu steaks that we have, and we just developed a signature signature burger, which has ground short rib brisket and chuck in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome. And so things like that are.
This is the one that you serve on. Is it the ones you're serving on Burger Thursdays and Fridays? Or is that...
It's not. That's just a regular burger.
It's a regular burger. Okay.
This is kind of one up from that.
One up from that. All right.
Yeah, and it is so good.
Yeah.
And what makes it good is it's rich,
right?
But it's not fatty.
Sure.
So it has fat in it, but because of the short rib and the brisket in there, it just has a real richness to it.
Yeah. You hit on something, and we've hit on it a couple of times. What's the interview process when you're hiring people to work for Zupans Markets? Because I've had very unique experiences with all these people. I was buying curry one day, and I was actually buying a curry sauce. And as I was checking out, they're like, "Oh, curry sauce," and I said, "Yeah, I don't know how to make curry, from scratch." And the woman checking me out says, "I do," and she gave me a recipe like on the spot.
That's
like
great.
She wrote it down and I was like, "This is so great." So obviously, and there's more stories than just that one. So, like for me, just all around, it seems like you're very particular, or maybe just very lucky in terms of the people that you've hired.
Well, I think we're fortunate that people who are into what we're into seek us out. But beyond that, when we hire people, whenever I interview somebody or talk to them about coming to work for our company, I say you got to like two things. You have to like food and you have to like people. And if you like those two things, you'll love working for Zupans.
Yeah.
And it's really true. It's a passion that we have in food. And I think it transcends to all of our associates. And it really shows when you go in and shop. And they'll talk to you about food. They'll talk to you about recipes or what to do with a product, or they'll cut something open so you can taste it. Or if there's a package on our shelf and there's an olive oil that, hey, I'm interested in this, let's open the bottle of oil up and let's see what it tastes like. And so I think it's a culture that we have, and a passion about food and then people.
And I feel like you've empowered your employees to kind of take the initiative, because me having grown up, I grew up a little bit in retail, where oftentimes it was the permission was never there. So it's just like, I want to do this, but let me check with my manager first. There's never been a point where it's just like, let me check on that.
No, I think most people, it's hard to sell something unless you know what it tastes like.
Yeah.
And so empowering them to say, hey, let the customer taste it. How do we do that for them? Wine has always been a passion of, it wasn't always my passion, but my parents kind of started off in enjoying wine, and great food goes to great wine.
Yeah.
And so they're a natural combination. And so learning a little bit about the wine industry and trying to sell wine to customers, and people asking lots of questions, the number one question is like, well, what's it taste like? What's it like? And unless you've have tasted the wine, it's really hard to tell someone. You could read all the notes you want about it,
right,
but you can't really tell them. But so having the power of tasting it and knowing that information and passing that along was so powerful. And it's like we need to do that with everything. And so empowering our people to, let's taste it.
Yeah.
And it goes to wine too, because wine's an important category for us as well. But
and in fact, that's one of the areas where do you have two Cellarsies now?
We do. We have two stores that have cellars in them.
Yeah.
We call them both Cellarsies.
Yeah. So this is so they're nice chilled, or I guess they're chilled because they're
temperature controlled.
Yeah. Wine cellars where it's pretty amazing. I'm trying to think of which one. They're both down in cellars, and I guess
they're both below the store.
They're both below the store. Yeah. Lake Oswego,
Lake Grove or Lake Oswego, and our Burnside store both have cellars.
Yeah. So again, this is kind of taking that wine experience. You're at the market. You need to grab some wine to that next level where you've got some true quality and somebody there that's going to be able to walk you through it.
Well, I think wine is a fun category as well, just like fresh food is. Wine is a category you can talk to people about. There's so much nuances in wine, and so finding wines that just go with food. And if you say, hey, I'm having this curry dish, or I'm having a steak, or I'm having a salad. We can find a wine that will pair well with what you're having.
What do you think because I think going back to the trends of grocery, because I think grocery shopping probably is the first little indicator of where shopping trends and even the economy goes, because everybody's got to eat. What does the future of Portland look like for you? Because it's growing like crazy, but just the influx of people coming in. What do you see Portland like in 5-10 years? What's it going to look like?
Well, I think Portland has been able to become this kind of iconic city in our country for food, and we're known for food. Our restaurateurs that we have, people are, the feast events that if you go to those, you come here and you see these people coming from all around the country here for food and experiencing that. And so I think Portland will continue to grow on that reputation, and I think that. For us, it's about giving them an environment to procure those type of products, and it's always fun to find new things and find unique things in the cooking experience.
Do you think that that some of these bigger grocers are going to follow the Zupans Markets model and say big isn't necessarily better, where we need to be a little more neighborhood focused?
Oh, I don't know where the overall. I think right now, if I look at just the general landscape, and it all has changed from when Amazon purchased Whole Foods, is it's no longer about quality. It's about quantity and price and commodity, basically, where everything is available for everybody at the And I don't see that's for us. That's not the fun side of food. The fun is finding the artisans and finding the unique products and finding the best strawberries or the best steaks or the best olive oils. And those typically are smaller production batches and something that can't be scaled for a large retailer. How
many new products, and I'm assuming because a lot of these are coming from local, are you introducing into because shelf space in grocery stores, especially
it's at a premium.
It's at a premium, yeah.
I mean, it's hard to say. We probably have over 30,000 items in our store.
Yeah,
and you're seeing our buyers are seeing hundreds of items every single week.
Yeah.
So it's really, really hard. What we say is we do the work for them by scouring through those products, tasting those products, trying to find the best products and things that we think that they might enjoy to put on our shelves. So
who does, because it has the Zupans label on it, your non-bread is like the best non-bread. Maybe that's a trade secret.
No, I think
it's so good.
I think we don't put our name on very few things, very many items, but the ones that we do, we're really passionate about the quality of those. And so from our olive oil and our tuna,
maple syrup,
marinara sauce, maple syrup is one that just came out.
Yeah,
those are all great products. And we find these little artisan producers that are making that for us.
Yeah, no, that non-bread is like
it's good.
It's toasted up a little bit. Ooh, should go for some of that right now. Mike, our half hour is up. I appreciate you coming in today.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Thank you for listening today. And in case you've missed any previous podcast, be sure to check out KINK.FM or download an episode wherever you listen to podcasts. And while you're at it, be sure to like and subscribe. The Portland 50 is a podcast about the people who dream, build, and champion the uniqueness of Portland, creating a better community for generations to come. It's presented weekly by Jaguar Land Rover Portland. One company, two iconic brands. Jaguar Land Rover Portland is a Don Rasmussen company, the legendary Portland institution serving our community since 1950.